Okay, so this word God, G-O-D, okay, comes out as the Germanic Gud, okay, who's also the Germanic Guden, who's also the Germanic Wooten, also known as Wood, okay? And for those that know their Germanic, they know that God is also God. God is also God, right? So this is the Gothic God, okay? And the Gothic God, Goth, is also, as you keep going further and further, Wooden is Odin, right? And Odin is, so it's Wood. As I said, Wood, it's war. It's Wed, as in Wednesday, right? It's Grim. Okay, that's like in conclusion. That's, more oftenly referred to as Grim. Let me see if that showed up for everybody. Okay, good. My head's on the screen. Okay, so this is important because English, as we know, okay, English actually is this ang is where we get the root angel from. It basically means like in itself a god, right? Or as we can see, an angel. It's like a one level below God, right? And then ish means man, okay? So English means, as we know, angel man, because it's an act of attempting to utilize certain angles from stars and to put them inside of the actual vessels that are speaking the language in itself, okay? And the highlight here is that Odin, or Wotan, though, has a very specific story, and that story really centers around what's called the wild hunt. And in the wild hunt, I'll find me something to wipe things off with in a minute, but in the wild hunt, let me get back to my desk. Hold on. Okay, there we go. So in the wild hunt, like specifically, like you can go and check this out yourself. Now, some people will go back and forth about this because they may want to use the words for something else. They may want to say, well, the word means this to me, but the word is actually a vibration. And the vibration calls forth from the angle of the torus field, the specific energy in which you're evoking. So it is very specific that when you're saying God, you're talking about Woden or Odin. And Odin's story is basically, in a nutshell, if you want to kind of hang out with Odin, Odin is the leader of the wild hunt. And what the wild hunt is supposedly a army, if you may, of ghouls, right, that chase large troves of dead people who have been killed in a war to eat them. Okay, that is the wild hunt. So I'm not making this up. So again, sometimes when we're even saying or thinking that we want to be something or be like something, we have to take a step back for a moment and understand what that something even is. And then maybe isolate that and see if that could be causing some level of confusion, because we have a big part of the world aligned to this angelic or Anglo-Saxon God structure, in which was birthed from mostly their conflicts, which they are seeming to steep themselves into even right now. And that the idea of the energy that they were attempting to pull from the stars was to actually be able to slay and all of these other things that are not even really the original ideals. And that's kind of what we're getting to here. We're not really getting to, well, who's right and who is wrong. What we're saying is the original is love. So the opposite of that is basically the shadow or the shade or the reflection. It will always be in itself the illusion, in itself the ego itself, ego prime. Somebody say demiurge, right? But I also find something very interesting, because it's almost like in certain cultures are attempt to try to take other cultures. So we started even relating all of the gods, if you may, from different cultures in with the Germanic gods. It was like they kind of consumed, or Gothic gods, they kind of consumed all of the other gods and theisms in the world, as if everybody worshiped the same type of God under the same thing. And that's not true. Doesn't that sound stupid anyway? Like you could go to my tribe somewhere else in the other part of the world, in Mediterranean. You know, we're peaceful. We ain't been through war. Everybody's on love, advancement, technology, the whole nine. And then all of a sudden, 3,000 years in the future, somebody is saying that the same God that we worship was the same God that everybody else was worshiping. Right? That just seems so far-fetched. But it can be accepted unless you understand what God is in the first place, what ancestors are in the first place, and how in which do they come into the world, and how in which are they evoked into the world, and what they are really. And also, when you're able to do that, you're also able to identify yourself. You're able to understand how you come into a matrix, how you exit a matrix, all those kind of things. So it's all rolled into the same system. Give me 1 second here. I have a definition coming for Wooden, or God. Now remember how this all happened, because the religions that are in the English tradition, it was like they just passed those traditions right over in the language. So despite the Christianity and all that, because these Anglo-Saxon kings, mainly the ones that are what they call upper gentry, the highborns, when they accepted Christianity, they accepted Christianity as a way to unify their colonies, but they never changed their they never changed their beliefs. They never changed their heritage and their lineage. So what happened was everybody just inherited their lineage and then accepted it. And so if you became a serf, which is basically anybody who was absorbed into their kingdom, if you became a Slav, or a Slovenian, or a slave in their fiefdom, then you worshiped their king Gud as a god, because everybody in that realm that was a ruler had to be able to prove that they were a descendant of these highborn angelic or English bloodlines. Okay, so we're gonna look real quick here. We're not going to harp on this, but we just want to make sure it's very clear that, because when people are telling you and they're asking you, why is all this happening? Why is God allowing this to go on? They need to understand that this is what God does. From that word, and maybe you just have a different definition of what we're talking about, but you need to be very clear with your words, because when you try to take somebody else's name and that name is already bound within the stars, you're not going to just change that, meaning that the Germanic god Gud's energy or vibration, because this is what they say in the tradition, that 3,000, 4,000 years ago, you didn't see any of the gods in this culture specifically depicted as like humans, but more as like energies that exist within things, right? So when we look here, and let me just remove myself from the screen. And this is just how backwards things are. Actually, let me pull up one more thing here, because just so people can see just how all of these sides are actually the same thing, but they have people running around here fighting on one side or another, dying in these wars. And then more than likely, because this is still the traditions that they're serving in, because they always got these priests and they always got these Orthodox creepos hanging around. Because of that, here it is, NASA right here. Let me see the highest member. Let me see here, highest member of the Sanhedrin. Highest member of the Sanhedrin. All right, here we go. Okay, so anyway, this term is Nazi, right? Whether they keep changing it or not, Nazi Sanhedrin. You know, sometimes like for a while, I just had to actually copy and paste some of this stuff, just because you would go back and you wouldn't find it. So anyway, a Nazi is the highest member of the Sanhedrin. There's a Wikipedia that actually dictates that. Okay. Why the Sanhedrin is actually a Jewish establishment. But then you would actually think that, again, that it was the Nazis against the Jews, right? So those are two conflicting things. Same thing here as this Odin. So as I said, now the Nas, a Nas would be then in this case a master of. Okay, so the word is a Nas is a master of. So a lot of the ending of Woden's name, as in Woden Nas, would end as the master of. And because people didn't visualize gods as actual people, but energies that filled everything, as you can see, Woden was the leader of the possessed. Delirious and raging, like when somebody is really going crazy, a madness and fury and a frenzy, okay, a furor, okay, frantic, wild, crazy, possessed, okay. So they're very clear that this word God is referring directly to this kind of energy. And so when that kind of energy is being evoked in the matrix, because there's a whole theology around this, as I said, the wild hunt, the wars, the whole nine, then it's like, okay, so you've taken on this culture. You don't want this stuff in your life. You don't want to live in this kind of world. You're trying to be with the original. The original is an opposite energy to this. It's not mad. It's not in a frenzy. It's not crazy. It's aware of what's happening around it. It actually knows what's going on. It's in the Zen moment. It actually is projecting what's going on. Something that's wild and crazy. That's another thing why you could see then that since we're talking about a certain type of energy, and this energy is now really becoming more of an id or ID'd, you can see that part of God's frenzy is actually not knowing everything. It tries to know everything, but it doesn't know everything. This is like a general of war wants to know everything about what's going on in the land because it needs those logistics. It's like the same thing that we're dealing with right now in society. It's like the cell phones are spying on us. The cameras are spying on us. The damn the AI is crawling all over the text. Satellites are all in the sky. Who the hell is so damn afraid? It's because it wants to know everything. And that's why I say when we want to become God, we're basically saying that we want to enter into this delirium. And that's why their initiations surround this level of delirium. And they will sacrifice a person into that delirium and then be like, next. It's like, again, because they're disconnected. If you're wondering, well, why are they acting like this? Why are they doing this? Because they're disconnected. They don't know love because they don't know the original language. You see what I mean? So the more beings that come into the world that can't tap in because the original language is within, then they start living without. And then they go into this madness, this delirious rage and frenzy. And then they try to control the world and everything around them with that delirium. So specifically with English, when you're saying God, G-O-D, you're talking about a specific being. So if you don't already know how to kind of bypass that part in your mind that wants to associate God with what you think God is almighty, God is blah, 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 and not what God really is, which is good. This already crosses a barrier inside of your consciousness and everything just unpacks from there. So what an illusion is that you don't see the first Trojan horse. You don't see the first thing. And if you don't see that first thing, everything else that comes after that, you accept. But if you know what that first thing is, you can override everything that comes after that. So if you can be using the word casually, yeah, I'm a God, but you actually know you're referring to I'm a supreme and not good, then, you're able to even maybe use the word. But if not, you fall into a default category that when you say that you're a God, you are actually still sending out the signal and that vibration or that electricity, if you may, because that's what words are. You're sending out that electricity of that specific entity.